there are more than 100 billion Earth-like planets out there in the Milky Way, meaning that somewhere beyond our pale blue dot, there could be all manner of creatures living their lives. But what about the animals we know for sure are not from this planet? From tardigrades to spaceworms, here are some of the animals that have survived space. First, let's start with the most famous space survivor, the tardigrade. These little guys have been everywhere, literally. There's no place on Earth too hot or too cold for these little critters, nor any space voyage too long or harsh. Tardigrades can survive up to 120 years without food and water, having been found in every imaginable habitat on Earth, from the highest mountains to the deepest oceans. They can even survive being sent into outer space without any protection. In fact, they've done just that twice. Once in 1969, when a Soviet satellite carrying a number of living creatures accidentally lost its protective cover, exposing them to the harsh environment of space. The other time was in 2007, when a European Space Agency spacecraft called Photon M3 carried a small group of tardigrades into space as part of an experiment to study the effects of space travel on living organisms. Both times the tardigrades survived. So what makes these microscopic animals so resilient? Well, it's probably a combination of several factors. First, they have a unique ability to slow down their metabolism almost to zero, entering a state called cryptobiosis. This means that they essentially become inactive until conditions become more favorable for life. Second, tardigrades have tough outer coverings which help protect them from radiation and other harmful space debris. Finally, they are able to repair damage to their DNA very quickly and efficiently. As a result of all these adaptations, tardigrades are truly the ultimate survivors and have earned their nickname, water bears. Next up, we have the spaceworm, more formally known as the nematode. Spaceworms are small, transparent roundworms that live in soil and feed on bacteria. Like tardigrades, they are also incredibly resilient and have been known to survive extreme temperatures, radiation, and even the vacuum of space. In one experiment conducted by NASA in 1995, a group of spaceworms were exposed to the vacuum of space for 10 days. When they were returned to Earth, it was found that 68% of them had survived. Another study conducted in 2001 found that spaceworms are able to repair their DNA much faster than other animals, possibly due to their small size and simple genetic makeup. However, despite their many similarities to tardigrades, scientists believe that the two species are not closely related. Instead, it's thought that they have independently evolved similar traits through natural selection, thanks to their small size and simple body plan, allowing them to enter cryptobiosis. But wait, there's more. Spaceworms are actually only one of two known animal species that can survive in outer space. The other is a type of rotifer, a microscopic aquatic animal. Like spaceworms, rotifers can also enter a state of cryptobiosis and have been found to survive in extreme environments on Earth. In fact, some species of rotifer have been known to survive for decades without food or water, entering a state known as diapause. During diapause, their metabolism slows down dramatically, and they become extremely resistant to environmental stresses. One species of rotifer, Brachionus rubens, was studied in 2008 to determine its hardiness limits. Researchers found that they could survive at temperatures ranging from negative 273 degrees Celsius to positive 151 degrees Celsius. In addition, they can withstand high levels of radiation and desiccation, which is the process of drying out. The researchers concluded that the rotifer's ability to survive in such extreme conditions is likely due to its small size and simple body plan, which allows it to rapidly rehydrate and recover from desiccation, and also to protect its DNA from damage. But there's another rotifer which is able to put itself on pause, quite literally. The Adenata vega rotifer can suspend its biological clock, slowing its metabolic rate down to 1% of normal, entering a cryptobiotic state that enables it to withstand extremes of temperature and pressure, radiation, and even the vacuum of space. So how do we know that this microscopic critter can survive in outer space? Well, because it's actually happened to it by accident. In 1974, a group of rotifer eggs were sent into space aboard a Soviet satellite. The eggs were not supposed to be there, but they stowed away in a crack in the spacecraft. Despite not being protected, the eggs survived the journey into space, and when they were returned to Earth, it was found that some of them had hatched. It's not clear exactly how long the eggs were in space, but it's thought to have been at least several months. The fact that they were able to survive for so long in such harsh conditions is a testament to the hardiness of these tiny creatures. Now, while it might seem like these creatures have superpowers, it's important to remember that they are not alone. As we continue to explore the universe, we are likely to find other animals that can survive in the harsh environment of space. And who knows, maybe one day we will even find life that can survive outside of our solar system. So if you think that you're having a bad day, just remember there are probably a few tiny spaceworms out there thinking, yeah, it could be worse. I could be on a spaceship hurtling through the vast emptiness of space with nothing but a few molecules of water and oxygen to sustain me for who knows how long. Of course, not all space animals are so lucky. Take, for example, the fruit fly. In 1995, a group of fruit flies were sent into space aboard the NASA spacecraft called the Long Duration Exposure Facility. The goal of the experiment was to study the effects of space travel on living organisms. Unfortunately, the experiment was cut short when the spacecraft was damaged and had to be returned to Earth early. When the crew opened the container full of fruit flies, they found that none of them had survived. The temperature inside the spacecraft had risen to around 50 degrees Celsius, which was too hot for the flies to survive. But they weren't the only ones. A group of nematode worms that were also on board the spacecraft had also perished. However, these poor guys didn't stand a chance. Nematodes have a limited lifespan of only 2 to 3 days under normal conditions, so it's not surprising that they didn't make it through the ordeal. But the next animal is a bit more resilient. Back in 1969, a group of frogs were sent into space aboard the Apollo 15 mission. The frogs were not the intended cargo. They were stowaways, having snuck onto the rocket in the landing module. Amazingly, they survived the launch and the journey into space. When the astronauts returned to Earth, they were surprised to find that 3 of the frogs were still alive. How did they do it? Well, it's thought that the frogs were able to survive by slowing down their metabolism and entering a state of cryptobiosis. However, this is just a theory, and we may never know for sure how the frogs managed to survive. What we do know is that it's pretty unlikely that it would happen again. Since then, NASA has taken great care to ensure that no animals are accidentally launched into space. And now they even scan the rockets for stowaways before takeoff. Finally, let's take a look at what happens to animals that are specifically sent into space. For example, mice. Mice have been sent into space several times to study the effects of microgravity on living organisms. In one experiment conducted in 2015, a group of mice were sent into space aboard the International Space Station. The mice were exposed to microgravity for 34 days, and while they did not experience any major health problems, they did show some interesting adaptations. For example, their bones and muscles began to break down as a result of the lack of gravity. Another experiment conducted in 2017 found that male mice are infertile after just 14 days in space. So it seems that even small creatures like mice are not well suited to life in outer space. All in all, it seems that the only animals that can truly survive in outer space are the ones that are small enough to enter cryptobiosis, like the tardigrade, the space worm, and the rotifer. Even larger animals like frogs and mice can survive for short periods of time, but ultimately they succumb to the harsh environment of space. So if you ever find yourself in outer space, just remember to stay small, and you just might survive.